This is great.
Okay.
This is exciting. Okay. Hey everybody, thanks for coming out to Helicon West tonight. Before we get started, we have a few announcements and a few people that we need to thank. So we're going to start off with these two announcements. I'm going to have you announce this and then I'll announce Helicon.
So upcoming in January, this is going to be our last Helicon of this semester. We're going to take a break until January. And upcoming in January, there's another event as well. It's Three Valley Poets. Stark Holbrook, Margaret Pettis, and Heidi Blankenship are going to be reading at the Bluebird. And that is on January 14th at 6 o'clock. And it's going to be a free BYOB event. And we'd love to see you all there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We also have our schedule for Helicon West next semester, and it's right here. But we've got some awesome things coming up next year. Next semester, we've got the Bullpen Slam team and the League of Utah Writers Showcase, and several other events that are just going to be absolutely incredible. So make sure to keep on coming out. And then we'd also just like to say thank you to the Logan Library for letting us host this, as well as to Stark Holbrook, who is amazing and who has been in charge of so many amazing things in this community for so long. We just really appreciate her. And then as well, we'd just like to mention that there is Cafe Ibis in the back. If you're after that coffee, go get it.
It's really good.
It's really good. And I think that is all of the announcements and thank yous, right?
I believe so. So we have, tonight is just going to be an open mic night. And if you would like to come sign up, the sign-up sheet is right here. Do you want to have it or should I?
I'll sit. I'm more central, so I'll steal it.
That is true. And if you would like to sign up and didn't get a chance, Shaun will have the sign-up sheet, so come find him. He'll be sitting right in the middle there. And we can just get started.
Yeah, so we're going to start with the first three.
Yeah, okay. So the first person we'll have reading is Nelda Ault, and then we'll have Ronald Jensen and Timothy Pedersen.
Okay.
Oh, and I am going to be filming. If you would like me to turn off the camera for any reason, just let me know and I will do that.
Is it Ronald Jensen?
It is Ronald.
It is Ronald.
My
Yeah.
apologies.
Okay. I wondered who that strange name was.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
All right.
Excited to be here. So some of you know that I work with refugees who live here in the valley, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about the terrible things that people say about refugees and immigrants, and I was always taught to kind of walk a mile in someone else's shoes and consider the other people's perspective. And that exercise doesn't get me very far in this case, but I was thinking one day, well, maybe it's because they don't think that they're American enough. And then I got to thinking, well, what does American even mean? So I looked up a bunch of statistics about the average American, and I wrote this little poem. I've got my sources down here in footnotes if you want to consider them. Okay, so this is called I Want You to Be an American.
Is the microphone on?
Check and see. It doesn't seem very loud. Let's go like that. Hit it.
It's on now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right. First and foremost, I want you to speak English, accentless, with all the swear words. You can learn those at work or on Netflix. I want you to read all traffic signs, every note from the PTA at your kid's school at the beginning of the school year, and the terms and conditions of everything you download. You might as well study up on those huge packets of insurance enrollment information and your own tax return while you're at it. I want you to go to church, maybe just on Christmas and Easter, which you also observe by going shopping. I want you to go to 4th of July fireworks shows with no memory of barrel bombs or mortar rounds, unbothered by the splatter of gunpowder over the heads of your children. I want you to eat bacon and beer and 101.4 pounds of sugar per year. I want you to have a lawn to mow and to own 1.927 vehicles, preferably including a minivan that you can drive to Little League and dance and gymnastics. I want you to vote, but not in the primaries, because who does that? I want you to work 40 hours a week at a job where you make at least $2,665 per month so that your family of 4 doesn't qualify for food stamps. I want your 1.87 children to be named Noah and Emma, and I want your whole family to have the same last name. I want you to have $30,000 in student loan debt, and and $16,000 across your credit cards. I want your sons to serve in the military, maybe your daughters too. I want you to pull yourself up by your cute ankle boots, you know, the ones that Taylor Swift wore to the SNL after party, because that's what someone in my past did. I don't know who they were or how they did it, but they did. I want you to yearn for no home but the one with the vinyl siding and the automatic sprinklers and the basketball hoop and the Monday Night Football and the neighbors who don't even know your name.
Hi, Ron.
So we're not going now. It feels like my left hand is trying to go now. So I'm wondering what my right will count. If I'm my diabetes, doesn't hurt me much. So I hope I won't lose my ability to test. I have 5 fingers, including a thumb, which I wouldn't feel if they went now. So I hope things continue to go well for me, so I can support my family. What goes on. I enjoyed meeting you in 1983. Maybe moving to Logan. A little nicer for me. Had a lot of fun with you and your chin. Now you're gone. So it's hard for me to grin. Now we're reunited with your son. And I hope to see you again when my life is done. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Timothy.
I have written 6 poems, but don't worry, they're all haikus. And I decided to have a theme of ending college or thinking back during my time of college because I'm ending in a few days, assuming I, pass all my classes.
We'll miss you.
But I'll still be coming back here
Okay.
when I can. So. How appropriate snow signals the close of college. Hallelujah! Textbooks are legal scams. Buy them for $200, get back $2. But that didn't happen to me. Flakes flick by my face, filling in my footsteps as I flee my final. But I'll be on the bike soon. Why do we nitpick topics to argue a point sources can't support? This happened like twice with me. Money has a funny trick of jumping from wallets while in the hub. 11 semesters, thousands of sweat-soaked cash, and still in retail.
Okay, next up we have Isaac Timm, Amanda Luzzader, and Chad VanZanten. So come on up, Isaac.
I pre-rose, so I don't have to put on a performance. But apparently I have not rose enough. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. I've got 2 poems. That first one you've probably heard. A lot of the people have heard this poem to death, but it's from my chapbook I'm looking to get published, called Curve of Her Hip. This one, so I've got 3 poems. The first 2 are from my chapbook, the other one's a new one. Obligatory rose poem. If roses have hips, then shouldn't they have feet that pound in swift needle hill stiletto, tempo on tile, a straight forward, here she is stride that makes a man stand up and pay attention. An echo that demands eyes all the way up the stem to a figure well fit into a Taylor red coat. Bobbed hair, short skirt, drives a man to write a poem. Let me love you awkward. Let me love you awkward, not composed, but on the floor, pasta boiling on the stove. You'll hold my face between your hands, look for meaning. When linguine boils over, scalds our hands. I'll laugh into your naked collarbone without the thought of syllable or verse. Stories to tell the 9-foot 9-inch man. 5-foot 9-inch man. I was not that tall. Stories to tell the 5-foot 9-inch man. What should the older, shorter me tell the younger 5'9" me? The boy, really. I would say man, but I never felt like a man. Like my father growing up, my father seemed to be the cut, the mold of all fathers. My father baptized me, held one hand in the air, another strong hand in the small of my back, and guided me under the water, and drowning never entered my mind, not once, as the water of the warm spring closed over, my body laid flat. That is the first thing I would tell my 5'9" self. Remember immersion. Remember 1,000 liquid fingers tickling your body. Remember the gem glimmer world just under the blue, the world fractured into waves, but whole and clear all the same. I remember in seminary the elder said plain and rather blunt that we are baptized on earth because there is no water in heaven. And I shrugged my shoulders because at 17, who thinks of water? But now at 38, after not being immersed in water for 2 years, since I got stuck in a bathtub thinking warm water would calm my spasming back, my wife pulls me out onto the floor, a wet pale ill, and wraps me in a towel until I gain my strength to crawl. I can tell you I was thinking of a dry heaven, now an eternal hell, but instead I remember the time, 2 years into our marriage, that we fell out of the shower onto the hotel room floor, and as you turn the lights off, the lights of the casino sign outside the window are reflected off the mirror. I draw your curves onto me, stroke your short wet hair, feel the length of your legs down my flanks. I would tell the 5'9" me to remember that because now I don't feel the tingle in my thighs. I can still feel the weight, but I can feel the fabric move on the skin where your kisses made bumps rise. That is what I would tell the 5'9" me to remember. Holy water, the warmth of your body, and the roundness of your knees. Oh gosh, sorry guys. Stalled out.
Those are so good, I think.
Got to see both of them.
So I have brought a first chapter from a book in progress, and I actually brought this chapter to my local writing group from the League of Utah Writers. And because that writing group has a variety of people and beliefs in it, we always like to give a warning if there's going to be adult content and give anyone who feels like they might need to step into the hall an opportunity to do that. So when I brought this chapter in, I did that in our group, and I actually set a record for the number of people who stepped into the hallway. I think about 50% of the room left, and as you can imagine, the remaining 50% were quite excited, but unfortunately, as it turns out, there was not enough adult content to satisfy the remaining people. So keep that in mind. I guess it's up to you to decide if it's too much or not enough adult content. Anyway, it's called Tiger and Pearls. I wasn't sure what made Mahoney beautiful. Her lips, her eyes, her hips, whatever it was, it made you want to sit and study her a while to decide for sure. And it looked like she was about to give me another chance. She pressed me against the door, her hands on my shoulders. She'd been waiting for me in the hallway of my building, in the dark place between the dim sconces. Ambuscade. I was fumbling for my latch key, half drunk after my last night in the city, and she just sort of appeared. If she'd had a knife, she could have stuck me in the back before I ever knew she was there. I'd have never known. Please, Jake, you gotta help me. Her emerald eyes pleaded, red lips parted as though ready to receive a kiss. So was it her lips that made her so entrancing, or was it the eyes? You know I can't mow, I said. My hand went to my wallet. Mo sometimes had sticky fingers. I'm taking the train in the morning, the 8:35, going back to Wichita, my old job at the Gazette. Everywhere Mahoney went, people stared. I once saw a guy so distracted as we rode past in a rickshaw that he tripped into traffic and nearly got creamed by a taxi cab. When we go out, I count how many heads she turned. 15, 23, 38. One time we walked through Herald Square, and I got to 50 before I quit counting. Men and women both would stop in their tracks and stare, and Mahoney was completely oblivious to it. Or maybe she only pretended to be. Jake, there's no one else, she begged, taking my lapels in her soft little fists. Just this last time, huh? For old time's sake? I had the great fortune of sleeping with her. In her apartment up in Harlem, on a tall bed piled high with perfume pillows, I lost myself. We'd make love for an hour, 2 hours. Afterwards, Mahoney would lay her head on my chest as we caught our breath, and then, just as I began to doze, she'd bite my earlobe and whisper, "Again." In the morning, she'd wake up with crusty eyes, mascara, and lipstick smeared. Her hair was a tangle of brunette, nighty a rumpled mess, like something blown into the room by a tornado. She'd squint at me with one strap drooping off her shoulder, rub her face coarsely, and mutter, "I'd fucking kill for a cup of tea." Tea, not coffee, and hell in that moment if she wasn't even more beautiful. I loved her. She didn't love me. Not in the way I wanted, anyway. Goddamn the man who broke her heart. She didn't trust anyone. Whenever she went out, she'd tuck a little 22 in her bra. I was ready to make an honest woman of her practically on the night we met, but she never let that guard down, not even with me. And when she didn't know I was watching, her face became sad, lonely. She wanted me near, but not close. "Let's be friends," she said to me that last night in Havana, "please?" And I was content with that. Well, no, I wasn't, but I had to be. "Old time's sake, my ass," I said, and I tried to push her away. She held on. "Last time you told me that, I ended up with a bullet in my brisket." "Oh, Jakey," she said softly. She smoothed the front of my coat and pouted at me. "That wasn't my fault." Well, not all my fault. Her finger traced my jawline, then touched my lips. That's Mahoney, a flash of desperation, and then it's all seduction. "I got a pack," I said. "I'd offer you one for the road, but I'm afraid you'd never leave." Sometimes I wondered if getting tangled up with Mahoney was worth the price I had to pay. She once told me she was deep-level crazy, said it seriously. "You ought to find someone else," she added. And then she laughed. But I saw it once in a while, and I believed her. There was the paranoia, always suspicious that someone was stealing from her, her makeup, her silver hairbrush, the silk pillow. She said people were trying to poison her. Why? God knows. Who was she to be poisoned? She was a typist, for Christ's sakes. And she didn't even show up for her work half the time. I unlocked the door and we went in. I poured 2 glasses of bourbon. There was no ice. Mahoney threw off her raincoat, kicked off her heels, and stalked across the room at me. I held out her drink and she took it but didn't stop. By the time she had her arms around me, she downed the drink and set the glass on the side table. "Mo, what gives?" She glanced at me and I swear she batted her eyelashes. "God, Jake, I've missed you." "Yeah," I snorted, "but I bet your aim's getting better." She stepped back and bit her lip. "Why are we still talking when there's a bed back there with our names on it? Come on, I know you won't let me down." Mahoney was like a stampede of gorgeous horses, and Lord, what I wouldn't give to be destroyed by her. So when she stared at me with those almond-shaped eyes, what else was I going to do? Tell her no? She pushed me onto the bed, and I knew I wasn't going to make the 8:35 or any other train headed for Kansas. Because you don't tell a walking piece of heaven no. You take the call, you step up to the plate, and thank Zeus she chose you. Danger or no, night or day, or as it turned out, nights and days for weeks and weeks.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Going well.
Good! Awesome!
Yeah.
All right, I may be a little too embarrassed to read this. Or I'm more embarrassed than I thought I would be, I guess.
Oh, good.
This is what they call, I think what they call a found poem. I found it in a little kid's homework. And it's a spelling word list. And it ended up being kind of erotic. And so I made it into a poem. I haven't added anything. It's just as it is here. It's 15 words, and the first 2 words are the title. Swimming swam. Getting. And if you want, you can imagine a little kid reciting the letters back to you. But there may not be time for that. Swimming swam. Getting. Coming. Came. Having, doing, ended, happened, happening, started, joked, received, smiled, smiled. That's number 15. That's it. And then I have just one little piece of an essay that I'm working on. For about a year, I've been writing essays about the wind rivers, and this is one of the final essays of the project, and it's called A Partial List of Things Not to Bring. Instead of a packing list, it's sort of, this is what you don't bring, and there's some practical information in it, like don't bring a lot of unnecessary gear, don't bring a book that you're not going to read, stuff like that. And each little item tells a little bit of a story, and they get longer and longer. And this is the final one, and it's the item not to bring is a miniature chess set. Mine is made of wood, 4 inches square by 1 inch deep, and it weighs 7 ounces. The playing surface consists of inlaid squares of light and dark sandalwood. It holds the pieces in place by means of a hole in the center of each square and a peg on the bottom of each piece. The lid closes like a clamshell over the board and fastens with a hasp so you can pack away an in-progress game. It's certainly the finest travel set I've ever owned, and I've never seen another one like it. I found it in a second-hand store. It was clumsily bound shut with masking tape, the hinges were dislocated, and the wood finish was in poor shape. No playing pieces were missing, but a good third of them were missing their pegs. Some had snapped off inside the board. I'm not a very good chess player, but the little set charmed me, and it was only a few bucks. And although I know even less about woodworking than chess, I managed to repair the pieces and fix the hinges and polish up the board. I played chess only occasionally at that time with my young kids, mostly just to teach them the rules. I played chess even less frequently with friends, and for that I had a normal-sized Milton Bradley set. I had no need for such finely crafted miniaturization and portability, and yet I always brought it on vacations and business trips when chances for a real match were even slimmer. And so I tossed the wooden travel set into my backpack when I started going to the wind rivers too, but up there it was totally different. Suddenly the chess set had real purpose. Up there it was an elegant little luxury, and everyone wanted to play. The rustic wooden board laid open between 2 contemplative outdoorsmen, seated in the low alpine lawn of a windswept mountain valley. It seemed sophisticated and very picturesque. And I don't know if Henry David Thoreau played much chess, and I'm pretty sure he didn't because he spent most of his time alone, but I think he would approve of the scene. John Muir and Wallace Stegner too. With the board on a flat-topped hunk of granite moraine, I checkmated my first Wind Rivers opponent in 10 or 12 moves, and it was awfully satisfying, despite the fact that he was just a high school kid who had to ask me how to do that thing where you switch your king and castle. But the best matches were with my son, Shreve. He was still a young kid back then, and he sometimes forgot how to castle too, but playing chess with me on the little board was all he ever wanted to do. Maybe he felt the romance of it the way I did, or maybe he just liked having my undivided attention, but on those trips he preferred chess to hiking and fishing and even playing in the fire. Shreve grew from kid to teenager to towering man, and as he became more occupied with girls and sports and friends, we missed a few backpacking seasons. He's in college now, and I haven't tripped with him in a long while. I've also gotten pretty ruthless about what I do and don't put in my backpack over the years, and the miniature chess set has been on the do not pack list for a long time. However, Shreve told me the other day that he'd been wanting to go back to make another trip to the Winds. He didn't mention the miniature chess set, but I immediately dug it out of the closet, and when I opened it up, I found the pieces arranged in a half-finished game. I examined the board. The pawns and rooks stood frozen in their ranks and files, still awaiting orders after all these years. It looked like white had lost a pawn and a knight, but was holding on to the center. Black had given up several pawns, and his queen was in some trouble, but he castled, and his position was not unenviable. It looked like it would have ended in a pretty good fracas. I wondered if it was a game that Shreve and I had started, and why we might have stopped. Thanks.
Okay, so for our next three readers, we have myself, and then Sarah Anderson and Emma Anderson. So just a whole slew of Andersons right now. And the essay that I'm going to be reading, I was supposed to read at a conference last semester, but we got to Houston and then turned around and flew right back home. So I've never actually read this in public, but here we go. It's called Write the Scene. 6 years old. He was 9. It's been 17 years. I don't actually know how old I was, I tell my therapist. 6 years old. I had to be 6. It's the only age that makes sense. It was the age of the colorful dinosaur quilt and the lion and tiger pajamas that my mother sewed for me. It was before my 8th birthday, before my baptism. He came to the birthday dinner when I turned 8. He laughed at me when I cried after spilling the free ice cream sundae, melting vanilla, staining cheap restaurant carpet. I had to be 6 because I knew better when I turned 8. Write the scene. I was 6, he was 9. My older brother was asleep on the top bunk of our bunk bed. I was supposed to be asleep in the bottom bunk. Dylan, he was 9, was supposed to be asleep on the floor. Did he choose to hang himself so his feet wouldn't have to touch the floor? It all happened on the floor. But he wasn't hanging over the floor where it happened. There was no reason for him to avoid the floor in those last moments. Was the fan spinning? I imagine him dangling from the fan, gliding around his room. He was wearing his prom tux when his sister opened his bedroom door to find him swinging from the ceiling, 19 years old. I was 19 when I told my mother, 3,000 miles away, serving an LDS mission in California. We could only write home once a week, and I used my one email that week to tell her. I told her in an email. I didn't get to hold her, she didn't have to see me cry. I didn't have to write the scene, didn't have to remember who took off my pajamas. I just wrote the word molested. Now I have to write the scene. Sorry, I'm having technological difficulties. Now I have to write the scene. I have to know. My older brother was asleep on the top bunk. Dylan was on the floor. I was on the bottom bunk. But then I wasn't on the bottom bunk. I was on the floor with Dylan. I don't know how to forgive him, I tell my therapist 16 years later. My job isn't to convince you to forgive him, she replies, crossing her arms across her red sweater. But I need to forgive him. I can't meet her eyes. Why? That's what good people do. I then recount the endless stories of forgiveness that I've heard through my years of Sunday school. I'm not here to help you place labels on yourself like good and bad. She sounds stern now. You're just a person. Write the scene. He was 9. I was 6. We had a cousin sleepover. My brother was asleep on the top bunk. Dylan was supposed to be asleep on the floor. I was supposed to be on the bottom bunk. Why did I get on the floor? This is our secret, he said. We'll get in trouble if you tell anyone. He was dead before I told anyone. I didn't feel anything when he died. I was walking to gym class during my junior year of high school. My name was called over the intercom and I was called to the front office. My dad was there with tears in his eyes. Your cousin Dylan committed suicide this morning. He got right to the point. I just nodded and said something like, how sad. Then I hugged my dad and went to gym class. We ran the mile that day. I had forgotten Dylan was dead by the time I got home from school. I need to write the scene, need to know. I forgot about that night until 12 years later. He died and I didn't feel anything. He never got that close to me. He got inside of me. And he always chose to hang out with my older brother. My older brother was asleep on the top bunk. Dylan was on the floor. Write the scene. 6, 9. Pretty sure we did that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 6, he was 9. Did either of us know what we were doing? I forgave him on my mission, I tell my therapist. But when I didn't come home from my mission straight, I started blaming him again. You know that this isn't the reason that you're gay, right? She asks. I didn't know that when I started realizing that I was gay, 18 years old, alone in my apartment, waiting for my roommate to come home from work. Remembering the feel of his flesh against my skin, 2 of us mashed together in the backseat of a friend's car as we drove home from Bear Lake. Why couldn't I love a girl like I was supposed to? What the hell was wrong with me? I was 6. He was 9. How did he know where to put anything? Is it a basic human instinct? Would that particular instinct kick in at 9? Could he have learned it from someone else? I just did what he told me to do. He told me to do a lot. More than anyone who is 6 should do, but I was 6, he was 9. Write the scene. I was 6, he was 9. My brother was asleep on the top bunk. He had to be. We tried to be silent on the floor. He couldn't have known. He was asleep on the top bunk. Dylan and I were alone on the floor, and my brother couldn't have known. We were so quiet. Dylan never talked to me about it. It was our secret. I forgot that night. I didn't want to get in trouble. I was 18 when I remembered. Dylan would have been 21, but he was 19, gliding around his bedroom, his neck tied to the ceiling fan. It breaks my heart that you've spent so long carrying this alone, my mission president told me, sitting on the other side of his gigantic oak desk. I hadn't carried it, I had buried it, then dug it up to explain my homosexuality. Did Dylan take my pajamas off or did I? He definitely suggested it. I was 6, he was 9, how did he know what to do? I need to know. I was 6. Did I take my pajamas off? Why did I climb out of bed? Why didn't I climb back into my bed? You were 6, my mission president said. You're putting your 22-year-old mind into your 6-year-old body. That's not fair. Was I 6? Was it before I was baptized? Did I change that fact so that I could pretend it was all washed away in some baptismal water? It didn't get washed away, but I had to be 6. He couldn't have been much older than 9. I worried that I might have contracted an STD. He had to learn from somewhere. I still haven't gotten tested. I'm scared to know. I have to know. I have to write the scene. I was 6. I can't do this. He was 9. He couldn't have hit puberty yet. My brother was asleep on the top bunk, definitely asleep. We were quiet. Dylan was supposed to be asleep on the floor, and I was supposed to be asleep on the top bunk. Hey, Shaun, he whispered from the floor, are you awake? Why didn't I pretend to snore? Yeah, I whisper back. Come down here for a second, he whispered, but be extra quiet. Okay, I say, rolling out from the colorful dinosaur quilt my mother spent hours stitching together. Did he take my pajamas off or did I? My carpet was long and shaggy, dark brown. This was the first time I ever felt the carpet with my bare back. It was rougher than I expected. I still don't know. I'm trying to write the scene, but I still don't know. What exactly did you do with your cousin? My mission president asked, sitting opposite me across his expansive desk. Did he need to verify that this was a genuine case? What qualifies as genuine? Anal and oral, I replied, not meeting his eyes. But you were 6, he said, raising his eyebrows, almost like he didn't believe me. Did he take my pajamas off or did I? You were 6, my mission president says. You didn't know any better. Besides, it was all washed away when you were baptized. You're placing your 22-year-old brain in your 6-year-old body. That's not fair, my therapist says. I'm pretty sure I took my own pajamas off. I left those lion and tiger pajamas my mother had sewn for me on the floor. He told me to. I did. I was 6. He was 9. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Sarah. I go to Logan High. That's my dad, Joseph Anderson. If you guys know him, he works at the library. I have 2 poems I'm going to read tonight. One of them is kind of long, and one of them is fairly short. So I'm going to read the shorter one first. It's called Insomnia. For the record, I don't have insomnia, but for most of my life I thought I did. So. The stars mean so much to me because they put the universe in my hands and beg me to alter it. They're the only company known when the world sleeps and I can't. What an incredible experience it is to see your world at rest, riddled with the pain of knowing you can't join them. So was that one. And then I wrote another one called Fighting Soul. Every step I took was controlled. I had to resist sprinting. My life was on my tail. I'd taken a quiet road, begging something to happen, anything. I knew I couldn't run from this, and really I just needed something to run from, but the road was open. They'd never find me. Though it left marks in the air, they couldn't track my breath, and there was nothing else to track. I could have left. I don't care about being famous. A well-known life isn't necessarily a better one. The one thing I do care about is lack of normality. I wish this life was enough for me, but it's not. Every empty road calls to me like a lover left behind, every day like an opportunity lost. I need adventure so badly, and I wonder if I got it if I'd stopped sitting on cliffs while I contemplated what it would feel like to fall, what the wind rushing over my silver hair would feel like, or whether or not it would be worth it. I've contemplated death because it holds more potential than my life. I understand that I shouldn't, but on more than one occasion I've stood with the intention to fall. I've walked on roads with an intention to run. I live every day in dread of having nothing to fight. I've been cursed with such an easy life when I was born with a fighting soul. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emma Anderson. I'm also Joseph's daughter. My poem is called My Sister's Kids. When I'm older, I'm going to be the best aunt in the whole wide world. I will spoil my sister's kids. In every family, there is always the one cool aunt. I will be there for the ups and downs in their lives. They will get awesome presents and hear about my troubles. And I will take them places my sister won't. Then I'll get in trouble, and she won't let me for a while, but as soon as I can, I'll just do it again. I will always love them every day of their lives. But what can I say? In every family, there's always the one cool aunt. And guess what? It's gonna be me.
I think at the start of the event we forgot to announce the Helicon West anthology. It is a collection of some of the poems read at open mic nights and the events over the last 10 years, isn't it? Of Helicon West, I think since it was founded. And you can get that on Amazon, and it is a wonderful read. I do recommend it. Our next three readers are going to be Mary Ellen Greenwood, Joseph Anderson, another Anderson, and Krystal Taylor.
I want to read a piece that I actually had published. This is what we dream of, right? It's a short essay, so under 1,000 words, and that's the point of the publication, which is really kind of a neat exercise in writing. I call this astronaut food. Poet Langston Hughes called it a raisin. One of the similes he used to describe what happens to hopes and visions we create that get put aside and dry up. Granted, he also compared the dream to fur to rotten meat, over-sugared candy, and an oozing wound. But at least a raisin is something that, while disappointing, sad, and the last element chosen from any trail mix, is something you can chew and swallow while figuring out what went wrong. A raisin is a raisin, though. No matter how you hide it in that waxy film mysteriously called yogurt, or dip it in cheap chocolate, it's still a wasted end to fruit that once had potential. Costco at least sells freeze-dried grapes, ones that are preserved and sweet and a borderline sacrament for anyone who dreamed of becoming an astronaut, but who now sits in a cubicle with a computer and a deadline. Freeze-dried grapes remind the white-collar worker that there is still a moment of escape to be found in, my God, I bet Neil Armstrong would have endorsed this, astronaut food. Brought to you by America's favorite progressive box store. When I was a child, I wanted to be a librarian-astronaut. I loved books with the same sanctity that right-wing Christians claim to have when it comes to the age of the earth. Books needed to be loved and cared for, defended against the tears and dog ears and gum of the non-believers. So my calling would be the one who sat behind a desk and reminded children that books did not belong at the dinner table or around sticky brothers and sisters.
The hyphen astronaut part came in 1985, 4th grade, when Krystal McAuliffe was chosen out of 11,000 people to be the first teacher in space, a regular person. If a teacher could shoot into the darkness and float and see Earth from thousands of miles away, then I would be the first librarian to do it. I would even land on the moon and leave a copy of Jacob Have I Loved, the best book in the Greenwood Elementary Library, no question, next to the reinforced American flag there. But McAuliffe's dream was deferred forever. In early 1986, I saw that part on TV with everyone else in my classroom and with my teacher, Mr. Parks, who cried in front of us that January day and no other day. Langston Hughes wondered if the deferred dream explodes, and I saw the Challenger do that, swirling and pluming into clouds of debris and fuel and human life. I didn't stop reading, and I would teach like Krystal McAuliffe did, but I would stay on Earth instead of float in zero gravity. And sometimes I would feel that other part that Hughes mentioned, the sagging and heavy load of deferring, especially when someone else wanted his dreams more and convinced me that I could have a turn, eventually, someday. 9 years of marriage, 9 years of moving after another job was lost, another employer was blamed, and another promise was vowed of, in a few years you can start your PhD, I just need to establish myself here. Give me 5 years. And I waited, because a good wife always supports dreams, or at least the dream wife does. She defers with a smile. And the sagging deepened. I stopped writing, stopped reading, stopped caring, and then one day, a phone call to Earth from 800 miles away, where his latest job had begun, and a new promise had been made, and a new move was in the works. I don't want to be married anymore, he said. And I exhaled. The burden lifted. The rotten meat replaced, the wound treated with a cleansing antiseptic, the sugary candy tossed. What happens to a dream remembered and put within your grasp one more time? It's no dried out remnant of what went wrong. It's astronaut food. Thank you.
Hey. I have a nonfiction piece to read to you that I wrote over the summer, and what you need to know before I read it is summed up in a quote from Bertrand Russell's autobiography, where he said, "Love of England is very nearly the strongest emotion that I possess." This is called Unexpected Joy and Unexpected Pain. My heart hurts for London. To you, coming from me, that may not seem particularly surprising. But the thing is, while I've been madly in love with England since the mid-90s, I had very little interest in the capital during all that time. Once, long ago, the English mother of one of my wife Amy's friends asked me where I would visit in England if I could. My answer was the countryside, no question. I wanted to stay far from the noise, the pavement, the crowds, and, if I'm honest, the threat of terrorism that existed in the London of my mind. Fast forward 15 years to the planning of our first trip to England in October of last year. I had to accept that in order to experience Westminster Abbey, where so many of my favorite historical figures are buried, and the British Museum, where so much world history is preserved, I was going to have to visit London. As the itinerary came together, we planned to spend what was essentially the last day of our trip there. Following the M1 south, we drove into London on a Thursday evening at dusk. With minimal GPS-induced looping, Amy and I located our rented apartment in the Bayswater neighborhood, north of Kensington Palace, west of Paddington Station, and east of Notting Hill. We emptied the contents of our car into the apartment, our luggage and our kids, tested the door lock, and set out on a date/quest to find food. Thankfully, a grocery store was everything we could want, was only 2 blocks away. So far, so good. Friday, October 21st, 2016. When I look back on it now, I can see that our time in London's city of Westminster was absolutely wonderful. I have nothing but beautiful memories. The people were kind and helpful. We encountered no problems during our rides on the Underground and the London Eye, nor on our tours of the almost indescribable Abbey and Museum. I fulfilled my wish of successfully using only a paper map to guide us as we walked. We bought books, clothes, and souvenirs in gift shops. Delicious smells we encountered led us to sweet roasted peanuts from the street vendor and a loaf in the window of a bread shop for dinner. The weather could not have been better. My attitude towards London was altered forever. On the 22nd of March, 2017, a man drove a rented car onto the sidewalk along the south side of Westminster Bridge and ran down everyone in his way. After exiting the west side of the bridge, under the shadow of Big Ben, he crashed the car into a fence surrounding the Houses of Parliament, ran around to the vehicle entrance for MPs, fatally stabbed Keith Palmer, an unarmed police constable, and then was shot and killed by other armed guards. In the end, the man had killed 5 and injured 49. The nationalities of those casualties included Britons, Americans, South Koreans, French, Romanians, Greeks, Germans, Poles, Irish, Chinese, and Italians, most on that single bridge. The attack affected me in ways I didn't expect, and still apparently. As I told Amy at the time, my first instinct was that I wanted to be there to support the people of London that had been so good to us. I became obsessed with the details of where it all happened. I spent hours poring over maps of the Westminster area and learning about its buildings and history. I was amazed at the echoes of our trip that I found in the attack, the fact that our family had walked along that same south sidewalk of the bridge, that a man from Utah, Kurt Cochran of Bountiful, was the first to be killed when he was knocked over the bridge and down onto a concrete platform near the riverside. That the killer drove a car exactly like the one we drove. I publicly mourned by hanging a Union flag in the front window of our home for days. 2.5 months later came another car and knife attack on another London bridge, this time near the oldest part of the city, an area we didn't visit. 3 men killed 8 innocents and injured 48. Then in the early hours of June 14th, Grenfell Tower, a 24-story apartment building just 1.5 miles west of our Bayswater apartment, caught fire and quickly became entirely engulfed. Photos and video from the scene were riveting and disturbing. I was shocked by the contrast of the raging fire in the dark of night and the thought that people could be trapped inside that infernal box. After finally pulling myself away from the images, I longingly flipped through the pages of Peter Ackroyd's London, the biography, then slept with it on my nightstand next to my pillow, where it remained for weeks. The flag returned to our window as we mourned the 71 dead. Most of those Londoners who were recently killed would have been in the city the day we visited. It's possible that they rode with us on the train into Westminster, or that we stood next to them in line at the grocery store that night. Maybe they're in the background of photos we took. Police Constable Palmer might have been on duty at the entrance to the Houses of Parliament the moment we walked by, thinking about how he was going to spend the upcoming weekend with his wife and 2 kids. A few months later, they would all be gone. I'm having trouble keeping calm and carrying on. My heart hurts for London.
I have 2 poems I would like to read today. They're both fairly short. The first one is a pantoum entitled Needs. What does one need to write a poem? A fistful of dreams, broken yet glad, to play with sound and feign a low hum, dueling beats till a rhythm's unclad. A fistful of dreams, broken yet glad, struggling to strike champion details, dueling beats till a rhythm's unclad, unless the need for discord prevails. Struggling to strike champion details that play with sound and feign a low hum, until the need for discord prevails. So, what does one need to write a poem? The second poem I would like to read tonight is called Spiritual Cleansing, and it's a prose poem. Have you ever gone to take a steaming hot bath to soak away your sorrows? Yet you find that the warmth of the water drains the heat from your blood and your passions. Piping in more water only dilutes your tepid basin of vitality. The porcelain sends penetrating chills throughout your neck and shoulders, so you pull the plug on promises and watch the water drain away your ambitions. You turn on the shower, hoping to wash away your worries, only to discover that the flow of the water only covers the upper fragments of your fragile constitution. The rush of water stings your back like a stream of sharpened needles stabbing at your sanguine spirits. There is no happy medium as the temperature of the water shifts between scalding solace and chilling cheer, and your legs are still cold. So you slip open the curtain to let the bitter air plaster your skin, and as you gaze past the clouded mirror that hides your tears from view, you realize there is no towel. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's already read. We've got 2 more readers on the list here, and we can still take more sign-ups, or should we just? So if anybody else wants to last minute sign up. Okay, cool. So our last 2 readers are going to be Austin Draper and Diana Anderson.
Hello. I go to Logan High. I'm a sophomore. Sorry, I almost said freshman. Let's see. So I have 5 poems today. So there are 5 of them. Yeah, I just said that. Okay. Point I'm saying, they're less than a page long combined, so it's not that bad. All right. So the first one is called On Days Like This, I Love Loneliness. I apologize. Days in whence my eyes drift to the pen. Days in whence my ears hear others cheer. Days in whence my mouth offends. Days in whence my arms sway and my legs blemish. Days in whence my mind thinks of sonnets. Days in which my soul aches for words. And days in whence others have similar ideas. So that's the first one. Sorry, I'm just going to turn the page to this. This next one is called Silent Night, which is no relation to the song. Sorry. I hear them speak to me. Find my strings, scare me again. But I reason with myself now, and I set up a call with them. Hello? Solve your problems, and I won't be bothered. All right, that's one of them. Okay. One of them is aptly named Wasting My Childhood. I look at what I have created, such things in vain, no purpose here. I love play and lack things here. I find myself within the shadows of past ghosts, and not on the shoulders of giants. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous here. All right, the second to last one is One More Reason. If I could but give just one more reason for someone to live, that would be my life. The goal of 1,000 I wish to achieve to make their lives more. All right, this is the last one. Don't worry, this is almost over.
You're doing fine.
Okay. All right, so this is kind of a sonnet, not really. It's called In the Night. In the night, not everyone sleeps. It's just another blurb of work to some. For some, it just means heaps. For some, it makes the glum. I find myself in vain when the moon starts to hum. But many sleep, forgetting the world in their eyes, and many by the hammer of dreariness succumb, and not hear the shrieks and the cries. But to those who do, I see them despise. how they must wake in times of rest. Insomnia creeps to the door, it pries. Its green mist consumes even the best. For none know work without night's long hours. Many find its implications in content and cower. Thank you.
Good job.
So my name's Diana, and I'm the last Anderson you get to hear tonight. I've read before, but I kind of took a break away from writing. I used to write very happy things, and then I got to go through some things in my life, and I wrote a lot of poetry during that time, but I've never actually read them out loud, and so I guess we'll see how this goes. I just have one piece. And it's called Torn. I am constantly torn between injured, broken, alone, depressed, and being happy with what I got in return. I know you are too. We are very similar, you and I. You are always smiling, but you almost killed yourself. I have weak moments where I want to apologize even though I did nothing. I know it deep down, but it's hard to believe sometimes. It's hard when you tell me otherwise. You blame things on me that never even happened. We were once strong, innocent, naive. Then we were injured, broken, alone, depressed, but we were together. I guess you weren't broken, but destroyed. You were never able to be happy after that. For some reason, you took that out on me. You dress nice every day. I notice, I admire, and I crack. You're trying to break me just because you know you can. But you don't get just one thing. You can't break something that's already broken. I'm already in pieces. I'm already damaged. I am already on the floor. So while you are cutting, I am picking myself up and gluing piece by piece back into place. Because if you can paint a fake smile, I can do a better one. Thank you.
Okay, and unless we have anyone else who wants to sign up last minute, then that is Helicon tonight. Our next meeting will be on January 11th in this same room at 7 p.m. All right, thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Amaya.
Oh, yes, and if you could stack your chairs and put them over by the walls, that would be wonderful. Thank you.